Great, excellent. Thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm very, very excited to be here. My name's Jenny Tillotson. I'm going to talk about my research sensory design at Central St Martin's. So sensory design, it's the creative convergence of the ancient art of perfumery with emerging technologies. So I have absolutely no scientific background, but I work with many scientists, and I'll probably mention a few during this talk. And it's really the developing knowledge and utilization of a whole bunch of different technologies: nanotechnology, MEMS, lab on a chip, sensors, miniaturization, and more recently printed electronics. And sort of fusing that with the science of smell, aromacology, and how that makes you feel, and wearable technology. So my background really is very much wearable technology, and where the cell phone is going to kind of evolve is it's going to be wearable technology. It's certainly going to be smart clothing. We already know that that's coming onto the market just recently. So my background is at Central St Martin's, so I'm exploring the expanding frontier of smell communication. I'm a reader in sensory fashion, and I have a spin-out company as of about 2 years ago called Scentsory Design and Technology, with a pioneer of lab on a chip called Andreas Manns, so he's working on the sort of delivery side. My background is in fashion communication, and I have a PhD in printed textiles from the Royal College of Art in '97. And my PhD supervisor was George Dodd, if that name rings a bell. I mean, he's had some knowledge in electronic nose. I also work at University of Cambridge with Professor Chris Lowe, and he works with biosensors, smart holograms, also biomarkers for schizophrenia and bipolar. And he's sort of well known for commercializing much of his research. And we've set up a company called Seroma, which is Cambridge Electronic Aromas, looking at new ways of delivering scent with solid scent technologies. And the ultimate aim is to put this into gaming and tablets, but link it to my wearable technology. So it's kind of going to be delivering scent from wearables, something that you wear. So I just wanted to kind of show this slide quickly because it gives you a bit about the perfumed past leading to the digital fragrant future of the 21st century. So we know that, scent, we've been wearing scent since 3000 BC and probably before. The Egyptians wore these wax things on their heads that used to melt all around the body, but perhaps on their clothing. And then in the 17th century, the French introduced alcohol-based perfumes. And now in the 21st century, even though I started my work in the 20th century, I'm looking at e-scent, which is electronic perfumery, really, electronic scent, but it kind of moving into digital olfaction, because I'm hoping to work with the electronic nose. I haven't done that yet, but I'm very much hoping to move into that area. So e-scent is kind of my project. E-scent is part of this sensory design vision that I've created. So it's really computer-controlled wearable scent delivery. It delivers a personalized, programmable palette of fragrance depending on mood, emotion, and time of the day. So the idea being that the scent is delivered from something you wear. So in this case, it's a pendant that she's wearing. It's activated from high-tech jewelry, clothes, cell phone, whatever it might be. And it interacts with the needs of the wearer to improve daily life. So it's activated by a biosensor, a biometric sensor. And it's very much based on the effective computing research that's come out of MIT Media Lab from 1995. I worked with some of those team. And it creates this intimate scent bubble. So it's this, we were talking about the olfaction plume. So obviously, it depends where it goes, if it's going to affect other people. But I'm very much looking at delivering a very, very, very small amount of scent to create this personalized scent bubble. And the attributes, really, to this kind of scent delivery, I'm looking to break the tradition of fragrance delivery. So it's a new way of wearing fragrance. It's controllable, targeted, preferably non-invasive and more effective. And it's this idea of less is more. You only need a very, very small amount, and you have this personalized choice. So here we have a Louis Vuitton bracelet, for example, and you'd have a chip in there that would have a range of different fragrances. And you could choose exactly what you want. And you can also layer it as wardrobe of fragrance, actually layer it throughout the day. and it's less wasteful, perhaps it offers a greener image, and it's kinder to the environment and kinder to the skin because you don't need solvents. So that's kind of my my business pitch of where I'm actually leading with this wearable technology and scent. But I'm going to talk to you many about various different applications that I could use and how I could work with the electronic nose. So this is my favourite quote from Thierry Mugler from 1980, which is 33 years ago. My husband worked for Mugler in the very, very early days, so he works with me now on my kind of sensory design vision. But Mugler said, fashion will change dramatically in the coming years. One will find it less important to be fashionable. Well-designed clothes for protecting the body and enhancing the personality will prevail. Fashion will be more human, closer to the needs of the people in terms of their being and well-being, and not well showing. Well, he's kind of moved out of fashion. He's moved into fragrance now and working with pop stars. But I mean, that's very much my favourite quote that I wanted to sort of enhance. Now, this, oh good, it's working. This is, if you can see this video, it's from Star Trek. And if you remember the Next Generation, the movie Encounter at Farpoint, Q was wearing mood-enhancing military clothing to change the state of mind. So yes, I mean that's kind of very much inspired me, along with Brave New World and Aldous Huxley's quote from the scent organ that I'm sure you probably know about, playing a symphony of various different fragrances to enhance, to change the mood. Others is Ubik, if you know Philip K. Dick. He's another science fiction writer. And he wrote a story about Ubik, which was this spray, which sprayed a sort of mystical bubble, I'll move ahead actually, that stopped a nightmare, so actually made you feel better, turns the life into a brilliancy. So it's a kind of reality in a can, because of course we know that smells create our own reality. It's our own smell sensory universe. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do with my clothing, create this very personalised scent that moves with you throughout the day, that kind of creates your own reality. So there's Ubik and the scent bubble. My PhD at the Royal College of Art, this is, as I say, going back some time. George Dodd was my supervisor, so I was looking at new ways of delivering fragrances in fabrics, in jewellery and clothing, but that was sort of interactive olfactory fragrances. And I went out to MIT Media Lab and met this lot. If you these are the original wearable computing group from MIT Media Lab. And Thad Starner, who's well known for sort of wearing the Twiddler, is one of these inventors. And then I worked for one of their spin-out companies called Charm Technology a few years later. And Thad Starner, he's the guy at the left. He's now working for Google with the Google Glass. He's the technical director of course, that heads-up display. And Martin Cooper, he sponsored the company. Now he's the inventor of the cell phone, so he's had a lot of press recently because it's 40 years old. So I was kind of introducing smell into this arena because it's still a very untouched area. Wearable technology is really about touch, sound, and not smell, but it's moving into that way. So just to give you a bit more about my background, which is a kind of very personal thing, but it's sort of very much where my passion comes from. 19th century print and well-being and scent. This is a family connection that's kind of pushing me into trying to change and bring in a new discipline in the 21st century. So my great-great-grandfather, William Frederick Tillotson, he was a pioneer of some printing technologies and packaging, but he married this lady, Mary Lever Tillotson. Now, she's the sister of the first Lord Lever Tillotson, Lord Lever. And what I'm trying to do is fuse these disciplines together to create this new discipline of sensory design, which is this kind of 21st century print and well-being and scent. When I say print, I'm talking about printed electronics and actually kind of miniaturizing scent deliveries, printing it on cheaply on a chip. And it works by creating this wearable emotional support system. So you have the stimulus, some kind of sensor, it measures a response, and then you have the e-scent chip that releases a therapeutic scent. And then, of course, it triggers a response and creates this kind of enhances the mood, reduces stress, balances the nervous system. So that's the kind of aromacology side of it. This is one of my designs, actually. I'll talk about my designs later on, but this, for example, just to show you, like she's wearing a pendant on her neck. She's got the jitters. She's nervous, and then, of course, it releases, the sensor picks up on this and releases a calming scent. So she has this sort of wellness aura. These are just some of the people I've worked with, a whole range of different companies. and scientists from Nike, IFF, Philips, more recently one of my projects that I'll talk about, and Adeline André, who's a haute couture in Paris. And this is one of my projects called Smart Second Skin, which was it was actually a scent installation, and I worked with Arome some years ago. At the time, I think were connected to IFF, but anyway, it was connected to these various sort of scent systems. But this was a dress that mimicked neurobiological delivery systems found under the human skin. So the idea being that there were tubes with the veins, the heart was the delivery system. So it was a kind of a concept piece. Here we are. These are some of the exhibitions that I showed it at, but it was you would press various buttons and it would release a scent. So this is not interactive. This was just to give you an idea of how the way I was moving. So then eScent was my first technology that I've patented. It's a user-worn dispenser where the frequency and type of scent delivery is flexible and determined by the user. So really it needs obviously some kind of biosensor or an acoustic sensor, or in the future, I hope, electronic nose that will be able to detect stress-related body odor. That's the kind of where I'm trying to get to, so that the clothing or the jewelry can release counteractive scents to reduce stress, for example. So in this idea, it's releasing these kind of well-being aromas. And then following on from eScent, this was, we saw some insects earlier. This is my insect project. I've got quite a few insect projects. This is called Scent by a Wireless Web, and it was a wireless project. And the beetle and the spider, they talk to each other. And I take a lot of my inspiration from insect defense mechanisms. This is the bombardier beetle that sprays its predators. It sprays the frogs with some kind of boiling liquid. And the spider had a humidity sensor, and the beetle had the scent delivery system. So you talk in the spider, it sends a message by radio to the beetle, and then squirts it from its backside. This was just using very simple humidity and temperature sensors that, from breath. And then taking it one step further is kind of to actually have some sort of wireless system that could have the much smaller chips that are actually printed electronics. So that's kind of where we're moving to. That was my wearable wireless jitterbug perfume that I showed earlier. This was a non-working device, but it gives you the idea that, moths, and it's inspired by moths and pheromones, but it was actually an idea that could work with Chanel, for example. So this is a non-working device, but you have a very, very small capsule of, for example, Chanel No. 5 or whatever it might be, and then you click it in, and then, of course, you wear your beautiful gold and ruby pendant that releases scent. But this is a new way of how, in the future, we'll have sort of these capsules of scent. This is another device. It should make a noise. Oh, it doesn't work. But anyway, there's a buzz of a mosquito, and then the acoustic sensor detects this and releases insect repellent or whatever it might be. But this is a kind of project for the military, probably not, I don't know. But this is, again, something that I've patented and taking forward for the future, and I call it the EMOS. This is my mood bag. This was a sensory mood bag that released various different fragrances depending how you're feeling from the shoulder strap. So it had little pump systems, sort of small pumps that release scent. It was actually just a manual system, but these are various designs. This is a recent project with Philips, a knowledge transfer fellowship in Cambridge. They were particularly interested in working with me on Avent mother and baby projects, and it created these various different mood-enhancing products, jewellery, but also bed units that you could use by the bed. It was this idea of having a kind of a scent system that works like a clock. And it kind of offers this palette of scent tailored to your individual needs. So you wouldn't actually, I mean, it's just an eccentric idea. You wouldn't have scent throughout the day, but it's this idea that you could program something to wake you in the morning. So it's an alarm clock. It's something in the evening to calm you down. But it gives this idea of this garden of live scents. So this is something that I hope to take forward with some jewellery products. And it worked with this sort of ambient body clock. So we worked with aromacologist. I actually worked with Tim Jacob, who I know was involved in the conference 2 years ago. He was working on he presented he validated the stress sense, and then various other aromacologists on how the colours could correspond with the scent. So it creates this sort of personalised rainbow. This was, so this is the personalised rainbow. So you'd have a sort of certain scent depending how you're feeling. You wouldn't have this red bubble, but it would, a scent that would, release to reduce anxiety. So it's this kind of mood swings. But also how it could work with their mood therapy lamps as well. Philips have got a background anyway in wearable technologies. They've been doing this for about 12 years. This is, again, another one with noise. You're not going to hear it. The baby's crying, the acoustic sensor that the mother's wearing, a wireless device, would alert her, and then she would, obviously stressed out, she just had a baby, she would come to the calming baby, it would calm her, and then it would help with a sort of reflex of breastfeeding, and then both mother and baby are calm. So it's a wearable wireless baby monitor. So University of Cambridge. So those are my kind of Central St Martin's projects, working with, on the whole, liquid delivery systems, very small pumps. But in Cambridge, we've been looking at solid scent delivery systems, and with Professor Chris Lowe. And ultimately, the idea is that it would be printed electronics for phones, but I think that's kind of in the future. But that's the way we've been looking. And what I've been doing with this technology is putting it into wearables, into clothing, into bags. And one of my projects was with the North Face, the running company. Oh no, hold on. Sorry. So yeah, the North Face. Oh, it doesn't seem to be working. And this was a rucksack that would release peppermint as you run. So it was actually, we managed to get 3 scents into this particular device. There should be an animation there, but it doesn't seem to work. And it had little cartridges that sort of went up in, depending how for the running. So the digital scent for the future. So I've called this my 2020 vision and the science fashion lab that I'm doing with my husband and a whole range of different designers. So it's kind of our new building at Cambridge University, which is chemical engineering and biotech, with Central St Martin's, and then I'm waiting for the kind of the miniaturization of all these exciting technologies, how I can put this into clothing, how I can have synthesized aromas on a chip that we can actually embed into buttons, and wearable smell scanners that can sniff how you're feeling. But to actually have this in the clothing, in the jewelry, I think is very, very exciting. So I've talked about having these printout chips and actually how you can have this actually embedded into the textile. So looking at this is one of my sort of scent chips of how you could release sort of scent on demand. So this is I wanted to talk very briefly about my FP7 project that we're waiting to hear if we've got it next month. But if we do, then I'm very, very keen to work with the Digital Olfaction Society. I'm one of 9 partners that have submitted an ICT project for reminiscence therapy, a kind of multi-sensory tool for dementia. And it's called Anchor. So, and it's this idea. I'm working on the scent part. The idea being that we'd release scent for reminiscence therapy. But I'm also looking at 2050, should I say, future scoping, and how you can grab smells and catch them and store them in your clothing, and then use them for memory recall, for example. But there's many other ways. Odor training, for example. But working with, again, the various others, Philips, Fraunhofer, there's a whole bunch of partners on that, so keep your fingers crossed. One of my other projects is a quantified self project, how this could be used with, as I said, biometric sensors, but could be used to reduce, for example, bipolar triggers, for reduced stress, then you're less likely to kind of have a manic or a depressed episode, but maybe it could use for future cyber tools. I've just won a Winston Churchill Fellow to go out to Silicon Valley to take this project further with the whole quantified self kind of field. Appetite. So this could be used definitely if you're wearing something. Appetite. I mean, it sort of builds on the Ode project in the UK that I know Charles Spence was working on. Aromas to encourage eating, then aromas to trigger weight loss. You've already talked about that, but actually having this as on a timer, on a personalised timer system in your clothing to release sort of scents, to curb appetite, for example. And then, of course, moving on from from well-being, you could have something to cool you down. So for lemon and honey, this is another of my insect animations. Doesn't seem to be working though. And then how you could use this in social networking. I mean, there's so many applications, but if you've got your clothing and you receive some sort of Facebook poke, whether it's a good one or a bad one, it would release a good smell or a bad smell. But then it could be used for a whole range of different social media. I mean, so it's really, it's having this actually embedded in your clothing and your jewelry. And the same again with Instagram or something like that. You could actually have cameras, wearable cameras, they exist already, that would take a picture, but also take the smell as well, and then you'd send that to someone. So I call that the smellicule memory, for example. Dancing. Oh, well, again, there's no sound for this. This is an idea of enhancing multi-sensory dance, but you'd have different scents for different music. So this is a disco one. You'd have some sort of smell that's a Chanel No. 5. And then you'd have Barry... You can't hear it. It's a real shame. Then you'd have Barry White, and he'd release pheromones, for example. The clothing would release pheromones. Again, we're talking about just a very personalised... And then some sort of lavender at the end to help you relax as you want to chill out and perhaps go to sleep. I mean, we've talked already about home videos and gaming, but then having this on some kind of pendants that you'd release some sort of scent that's actually wearable. The same again with cooking. This one I very much like, based on research from it was reported in Nature that you could actually maximize the effectivity in nighttime smell learning. So you'd have these sort of pajamas that would pulse out scent as you're sleeping, and then you'd have the same scent in the classroom. And I think there's a bit of Japanese writing there that says, I can't remember what, but anyway. So it's this idea of having sort of power pajamas. These are the power pajamas. I mean, there's so many mad ideas you could do with this, but this really excites me. And then wallpaper, wellpaper. This is my wellpaper ambient intelligence project, that you'd have certain sort of sense in the well-being that would monitor how you're feeling and respond to the context, for example, where you might be, how you're feeling, and why, what clothes you're wearing. So, and whom you're meeting. So the clothes really sort of fit the mood. And the same thing again, you want to turn the scents off if you're in a tube or in a subway or in a lift, for example, and you're in a perfume-free zone. You need something to turn the scent off with people who are allergic to certain aromas. So trying to look at how this can actually be turned off. And then again in smart sensory homes to actually warn you if your heating's too high, or, so many different ideas there. And then having it for banking, so releasing scent when you're going overdrawn or you need to sort of buy some stocks and shares. So it's a communication system, we know that, but I'm trying to sort of look at ways of putting this into clothing. And then again with a navigation system, having some kind of scent that could help you navigate, obviously on the battlefield, or people that are sensory impaired. And then we've already talked about cancer and the dogs, but I really want to put this into clothing. So hopefully this, when you get to the stage, you've got some kind of small chip, then come to me. I'd love to work with that. And I think that's it, really. Just to conclude, really, as I said, I'm looking for, once you can get this technology and it's miniaturized, put this into clothing, I think it's so exciting. And really, I just sort of want to thank my team at the University of Cambridge and Central St Martin's and people that work with me on the fellowship. Thank you.